In the narcissistic developmental arc, these two phases of ASR explain both the sealed idealizing gaze and the externalized demand. Infantile ASR, annihilatory panic. The good enough mother fails. The infant experiences unregulated disillusion. This catastrophic state is sealed into the annihilatory stress response as the nuclear trauma. Exilic ASR, the anticipatory shadow reflex. The child, to survive, externalizes the idealizing gaze, now searching for it compulsively. The anti-libidinal mother becomes the only active internal conduit, structuring the false self's transactions. Thus, the idealizing gaze, the libidinal mother, is sealed inside the ASR at the moment of annihilatory trauma. The shadow reflex is the psychic scar, always anticipating rupture, always pulling external objects into reenactment. The anti-libidinal mother provides the energetic medium, converting this reflex into the narcissistic libido that powers the false self. This shows why Vaknin's empty schizoid core and M-Pit's sealed ASR nucleus are describing the same structure from different angles. Vaknin emphasizes the emptiness and compensatory shell. M-Pit shows what exactly is sealed there, the lost gaze, and how the shadow reflex drives the parasitic outward loop. The sealed idealizing gaze. The idealizing maternal gaze is not an abstract symbol. It is the child's first mirror, the founding reflection that allows I am to be felt as real. In healthy development, this gaze inhabits the ASR, regulating libidinal and anti-libidinal charges and providing continuity of self. In narcissistic development, the gaze is lost through neglect, trauma, conditional love, and the ASR cannot integrate libidinal and anti-libidinal positions. The gaze becomes sealed inside the annihilatory stress response, inaccessible to the child's ongoing regulation. This produces the phenomenology Vaknin captures so precisely, the sense of a core that is present yet absent, an unreachable sun inside a black hole. Reaction formation and projection. Sealed inside, the idealizing gaze cannot be accessed directly. Instead, a compensatory process unfolds. By reaction formation, the gaze is projected outward. The narcissist comes to demand from others the very gaze they once needed from the mother. Survivors are conscripted into this role, becoming externalized regulators. Thus, the survivor is not just a subject of supply in a crude sense, they are asked to embody the frozen libidinal function of the mother's gaze, to look upon the narcissist with the missing charge of idealization. The anti-libidinal conduit. When the libidinal gaze is sealed off, the anti-libidinal mother, the shaming, rejecting, punitive object, remains active. This object is not sealed. It becomes the conduit of narcissistic libido. Through it, envy, aggression, and domination find their path of expression. It powers the false self casing, which surrounds the ASR like an exoskeleton. The false self, therefore, does not emerge in a vacuum. It is animated by the anti-libidinal conduit, fueled by the very hostility that once fractured the mother-child bond. The false self as parasitic casing. Here we converge with Vaknin's insight. The false self sits outside the core, a casing or protective mask. Its function is twofold. Protective, it shields the sealed inner core, the idealizing gaze and true self, from annihilation. Parasitic, it usurps the role of the anticipatory shadow reflex, regulating affect not through internalized good enough objects, but through external supply and fantasy projection. The false self, therefore, lives by siphoning off libidinal charge from others. It takes the projected idealizing gaze, metabolizes it through fantasy, and uses it to regulate a system that is otherwise structurally hollow. The libidinal economy of narcissism. Putting these elements together, the narcissistic system can be mapped as follows. Sealed inside the anticipatory shadow reflex, the idealizing maternal gaze, the true self, split and undeveloped, the active conduit, the anti-libidinal mother, operating as narcissistic libido, an external casing, the false self, both protective and parasitic, and then the external loop of projecting the idealizing gaze and demanding it from others. Survivors function as externalized ASRs, supplying the gaze that cannot be accessed internally. This structure explains the survivor's annihilation trauma being reduced to a gaze function rather than a person. The narcissist's addictive need for external affirmation. The regulator is externally located. The coexistence of emptiness, sealed core, and aggression, anti-libidinal conduit. Clinical and symbolic implications. For survivors, the trauma is not merely being used, but being reduced to the rank of their idealizing gaze itself. Their subjectivity is stripped, replaced by a function. For narcissistic pathology, the ASR is never absent, it is frozen. Recovery or therapeutic work must aim at reopening the sealed gaze rather than simply dismantling the false self. For psychodynamic theory, this model unites Fairburn's libidinal anti-libidinal split, Winnicott's true-false self, and Vaknin's schizoid core under the NPD framework as the anticipatory shadow reflex. The narcissist does not live in a world of people and objects as others do. They live in a libidinal economy shaped by a sealed nucleus and a parasitic casing. The idealizing maternal gaze, sealed inside the ASR, becomes unreachable and must be sought outside. The anti-libidinal mother becomes the internal conduit of energy, powering the false self and driving the search for supply. Survivors are drawn into this vortex, conscripted as external regulators, their humanity eclipsed by function. In this way, both Empit and Vaknin converge, inside the seed maternal split and true self, outside the false self casing, between a parasitic loop of projection, fantasy, and external supply. This is the full psychodynamic map of the narcissistic core. A sealed gaze, a hostile conduit, and a false self feeding from the world. Peace out. Loads of love.